it's always been there. It's always been the side thing. The goal was never to make a living at it, which is honestly has been very liberating because there's a lot, once it's on your shoulders that this is how you make your money, this is how you survive, this is how you keep a roof over your family's head, it becomes a different animal than when you just get to be creative for creative sake. So being that I had a working acting career, it's always left me room to just do the music, create as I wanted. And that's been kind of cool.
Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in musician and acting legend Courtney Gains. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm just sitting here being a legend, man.
I'm sure. I'm
That's what
sure.
happens when you get old. They call you an icon or a legend. That just means your ass is getting old.
I guess, but I mean, you have put down, a tremendous career on a bunch of fronts. So I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. This is really cool to chat with you. I have followed your musical career as well, but obviously, I think a lot of people know you from acting,
Of course.
from
Of
from a
course.
wee child until recently, and stuff across your whole career. But we're gonna talk mostly about Safe Haven, your new album, and you've
Cool.
had a couple of lives as a musician first and foremost.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
I know there's a famous story about you getting on stage with Fish in the
Yes.
90s. Right off the bat, that was, interesting. It's not novel. You make music, you write songs, you play guitar, you sing. You have your own voice. You found yourself across a bunch of different, fronts, as I said, artistically. So,
Yeah.
how did you get, obviously had the acting bug as a child, but when did you get into music and making music?
Believe it or not, it all kind of started at the same time. It all started at 13 taking lessons, right? I started taking guitar lessons and acting lessons at 13. The difference was the acting lessons were with a professional actor, a guy named Virgil Fry was my mentor, Soleil Moon Fry, Punky Brewster's father. He was a working actor. He became my manager. He broke me into the business. So I had a different level of support as an actor, but I started taking guitar lessons at the same time, and as soon as I was good enough to, put three chords and the truth together, I just started writing. And that's always been the thing for me. It's the writing. That's the real joy. That's the real high. And I didn't want to know too much as a guitar player because I didn't want to. If I figured if I learned too many covers and knew too much, I'd talk myself out of a lot of writing. I go, oh, that sounds like this. Oh, that sounds like that. So I want to teach myself to to learn to play up the neck and things like that. So I just slowly evolved, and then finally, I had my first band. Well, actually, the first band was a band called Rooftop Boys, which it was the first time I started playing Good Times, which is the sixth track on this on this EP. And then then I had an acoustic band after that called The Gathering with a female singer who was really good. We started writing when she was like 15. We were both in the acting class together, and then we so during the whole 80s Sunset Strip metal scene, we were off in the coffee house scene doing our thing, and that was where my first test to go. I really believed I could write a song. That was always what I hung my hat on and what I still do. And I was like, well, only way you're going to find out if anybody else likes them is to get out there, start playing. And I've always gotten a pretty good response on original material. And then that led to my band Ripple Street, and then that led to me doing this solo project. So, and there's been a few other things in between along the way, but it's always been there. It's always been the side thing. It wasn't the goal was never to make a living at it, which is honestly has been very liberating because there's a lot, once it's on your shoulders that this is how you make your money, this is how you survive, this is how you keep a roof over your family's head, it becomes a different animal than when you just get to be creative for creative sake. So being that I had a working acting career, it's always left me room to just do the music, create as I wanted. And that's been kind of cool.
Right on. Thanks for sharing all that. I wonder if some of your acting experience crosses over to songwriting and portraying characters and lyrics, because clearly there's definitely some overlap there.
It has the number one thing I think, if I was to say what is my artistic gift, as it were, right, is the ability to create moods, the ability to create feelings, whatever you want to call that, right. And I think as an actor I'm able to do that, and I think that's when I write, that's how I write too. I don't write from a skill set of like, oh, I'm doing this in the key of G in 3/4, a bossa nova groove. Like that's not how I write. I don't write from intellect, I write from emotion, right. And I've used music throughout my life to help me get through tough times and tough spots. Things that I was going through that were hard for me, sad, whatever, that I couldn't quite put in words. I could put them into words, into a group, into a song, and then I could play those songs and actually get it out. So it's always music's always been cathartic for me, and sometimes acting has been too. But yeah, as time went on, I went from just writing nothing but personal stuff and to start storytelling. That's when the acting started coming in. And a really good example of that whole meeting of the minds is a movie I put out that I starred in and helped produce. It came out in 2006 called Benny Bliss and the Disciples of Greatness. And that's a rock and roll road comedy with an anti-technology message. And that anti-technology message was a personal rant that the director Martin Gigi, who also played keyboards in the movie, and this guy is a working director. But he's also a very accomplished musician. He's Billy Gibbons' keyboard player when Billy's not doing ZZ Top. And how he and I really hit it off was we were in this NBA league, this entertainment league. I always say the NBA the E should really be for ego because it was pretty hilarious, all these people. And so he and I would kind of get a kick out of all this. But the real thing was, it turned out he was part of that whole jam scene in Burlington, Vermont that Fish came out of. So that was like, he was like, how do you know Burlington and how do you know Fish? And that's where we first started to do stuff. And he came in and laid some keyboards down for us. And it was, he was fantastic. We were like, holy shit. And then he was like, let's do like a video EPK of this thing you're doing, this Benny Bliss guy. And then after we did that, he laughed so hard. He's like, now we're going to make a movie. And it happened. You hear everybody in LA talk a lot, but this guy, we actually got the money together and we actually made the movie. And we had a hell of a lot of fun doing it. And the whole thing culminates in a desert as a vortex where where electronics cannot be reached, and it's a real show. It's a real like 15-30 minute actual show with a real band, and it was wild, man. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I'm not surprised that you have done some work for movies and movies you've also worked on, but I imagine it'd probably be really cool for you to do some soundtrack stuff. I just saw the new Scorsese movie, and I think it's the final recordings of Robbie Robertson, rest in peace.
Yes, well, yeah, him and Scorsese were very tight, and yeah, Robbie. I mean, he went right from that whole thing of the band to working with Scorsese and doing soundtracks here. But such a great one for to do as his last one, because obviously he also is an American Indian, so he got to have he had to go out like on the pinnacle of his whole thing, on his shield, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, I have been fortunate enough to have a few songs in movies. I have one right now, a song from Ripple Street called "Going Places" that's in this low budget movie called American Bigfoot, but it's the ending title track, which is like the primo spot to be. So that was cool. And then a movie I did called My Redneck Neighbor. I always say, who do you think played the redneck neighbor? Journeyman, which is a song that people know the story, that's Matt Sorum helped produce and Slash played on, continues to find life, and that's in that movie. So some very mainly low budget films, but people who hire me, and if they know I do music, they're willing to take a listen. Or they like something, I give it to them at a reasonable price, and it gets in a film, because I just want the exposure. And so it'd be interesting to see if any of these new songs will find their way into a soundtrack. Three of the songs, which I know we're going to go over them individually, we talked about them, but Big Brother, The Healer, and Good Times are actually all in that Benny Bliss movie. And we were supposed to record a record, but we never did. So I decided to put those into this, because they were all storytelling, and these three new songs were all storytelling. So I said, let me do a bit of a storytelling EP, and things that I'm kind of things that are I have a little bit of angst about, in a fun, sarcastic kind of way.
Yeah, thank you. I think you really have found your voice as a singer-songwriter here, and
Thanks.
I'd like to hear more of it. But obviously, this is new, or new to us. But
yeah, exactly.
It's kind
of some of it's old and some of it's new. Yeah, but
yeah,
yes.
That's okay. Everybody's got a satchel. Every guitar player and singer-songwriter's got like a notebook of lyrics, or some tapes living somewhere in a box, waiting to get rediscovered.
Yeah, and what really happened was, like everybody else, man, in 2020, you start looking in within and going, what do I want to do? Who knows how long I'm going to be here? And got a little bit of time on my hands, and I was like, I really been talking about tracking these songs for a long time. And then I kind of started going down the rabbit holes and realizing you could get, the technology's evolved so much now that you can get equipment pretty cheap and start doing some home studio tracking and get the ball rolling. So that's when I put out the Acoustic Gains record in 2021. And then Ripple Street got back. They got back in touch with me, and then I had my system so I could start tracking it at home, vocals and things. So we put out 5 songs, and then that led to this last record. So since 2020, I've sort of just been in this process of recording and doing different projects. And now that it's like I don't like Spotify. I don't like the concept of doing singles, but at the same time, you don't have to do a full record anymore. And that used to sort of mentally limit me because I felt like these 5 songs go together and these 5 songs go together, these 6 songs go together, but I don't have 10 songs. I don't have 12 songs. Now I'm like, I don't have to have 10 or 12 songs. So I can just put out these EPs and people are open to it now. And so it's sort of the time for me to put my stuff out. It's like where it's kind of the right time and the right mindset, you know?
Right on. You know, the mother of necessity's invention, right? We were all put against the wall,
Right.
you know, euphemistically a few years ago, and it's not really over, but you know, it's sort of over. We're pretending it's over, but you know, I don't know. You know, I imagine you're an extrovert by nature, but the introvert part of all of us had to become, you know, go to the wood shop, and either some of us baked banana bread, and some of us made music, and some of us did a lot of videos, like I'm
Right.
doing now. I
Right.
still am. We're still doing them. We just doubled down on whatever we were good at. So I'm
I,
glad you were able to find, you know, some way through and a productive and
right.
cathartic way.
Yeah, I think of myself more as an introvert, to be honest, not an extrovert. But I think as an actor, it allows me it gives me permission to just, go off in any direction and do anything. And that's the thing. Things that I wouldn't have the balls to do maybe in real life as an actor, I'm fearless. You know what I mean? You got to go for it. You can't hold back. That's not where the good work happens. The good work happens jumping off the ledge.
Right on. You know, that kind of reminded me of one of my favorite actors is Dennis Hopper, another
Yeah,
great long gone. And he used to say people used to pick on him for making so many movies, and they weren't all winners, right?
sure.
But he was like, if I don't work all the time, how do I know I'm any good at what I do? This is my craft. So it's the
Right.
same thing. I know if I don't write all the time, I don't think I'm very good, and I'm sure it's the same with you. Do you make music weekly, daily, or just you have
Well, I'll tell you where
times
I'm
for it?
feeling. I would just let the writing come when it came because again, I wasn't under any pressure from a label like, get me 5 hits by tomorrow. So to me, when the muse comes, it comes, and when it comes, you have to sit there and finish the song. You have to get it out because if you go, you can't just walk away and come back. At least I can't. That's not how it works. But right now, I have a band as well, the Courtney Gains group, and we've been playing now for about a year. And the whole concept was really gearing up to be able to go promote this record. So get me back, and I've been able to get that out there regularly now, like Weekend Warrior playing 3 45-minute sets a night. It's a lot of material. It's been really good for me. And what's funny about it is it's been good because it's got I have less performance anxiety because I'm performing more consistently. But at the same time, if I don't perform for a week, I start to feel like the band, like we're losing our chops. Like once you get in that flow, you just want to do it more. And when you do back-to-back gigs, you always feel like that next gig is really good because you just played the night before. So I'm hoping that with the booking stuff we're doing next year, that we'll have a chance to take that even further and maybe do 4 or 5, 6 shows, in a row or every other day, like do go 10-day run in the West Coast, come back and see where that takes us because it's you just, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Right. But on that note, before we lose Dennis Hopper, the late great Dennis Hopper, obviously I got to work with in Colors, and he's a creative and crazy genius, no doubt about that. But I just did one of the things I did that came out this last year was I did a Grand Theft Auto Los Santos Drug Wars for Rockstar. I didn't even know what I was doing. They wouldn't tell me. They keep everything really secret, and I didn't even know what the character looked like or anything. Just in those bubble suits and doing your thing. It was a lot of fun to do. But when I read that character, he's the guy who makes the acid for this gang. The first person I thought of was Dennis Hopper, and I would definitely say it's if you watch the uncut scenes, you can find them on YouTube. The character's name is Labrat. I think it's certainly the closest to my ode to Dennis Hopper, without a doubt. So if you want to see Courtney Gaines sounding a little Dennis Hopper, like, hey man, what's going on? I highly recommend it. I think it came out great. I love the character. So yeah, I've had a couple cool things come out this year, so that's been nice.
Nice, and another legacy franchise that you get to be a part of, which is amazing.
Are
How
you
many?
kidding? Yeah, I'm part of Grand Theft Auto. When people are like, it might be Grand Theft Auto. I'm like, if it is, my head's going to explode. That's like amazing. You got to be kidding. Like, Grand Theft Auto, one of the biggest video franchises of all time. I'm actually part of that. I don't understand. Like that just sort of, I don't know how I fell into that, to be honest. But I'm thankful I did because that's a good one. And it's streety, which is like my cup of tea. So it's like I'm glad I got to do something that's one of those kind of video games. So
Right on. Let's talk about Safe Haven. Let's go through the
Yeah.
tracks and anything you feel like sharing with us about the songs or the meanings
I'm
or
just going to tell you exactly what they are and what they're about. And because I don't want to be I know that like a lot of musical artists try to be very vague and like let people experience whatever they think it is. You're still going to think whatever you think it is. And I don't know. I'm not trying to, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to sell records and be mysterious. I'm going to tell you my point of view on these songs and where they came from. It's just,
awesome. We're here for it. So let's start off Safe Haven. Obviously, the title track is the opening track on the record.
sure. So I think so. Safe Haven. When I pivoted to do this band, the first thing I decided when I realized out here in Savannah, if you want to get paid, you got to play 3 45-minute sets a night, which means you're gonna have to play a bunch of covers. And I wanted to do, and I found a way to interpret them in a way that I felt good about because I'm just not that note for note kind of dude. I switched to bass because I feel like I needed a better guitar player to help carry the songs because you got to really stretch out like 8 songs over 45 minutes, 7 songs. So I said, let me switch to bass, and I'm just a bass imposter. I basically play guitar on bass. That's what I do, right? But it works. It works. But so when I first started playing bass, I just came up with this cool riff, that's in that song. And when that riff happened, what came out subconsciously was Safe Haven, and I think that was probably again because we were in a pandemic and I thought about what I thought about was, wow, what about those people that don't have a safe haven? What about those people who are on the streets? And I remember I moved to Savannah by this point, but I saw so many videos in L.A., which is where I'm from. Venice Beach got completely taken over by the homeless. MacArthur Park, which is downtown L.A., which is an area I know well. Echo Park Lake, which is also downtown. These were areas I grew up in. There was homes all around the lake. I'd never seen anything like it. Never thought I would see anything like it. And I just thought, like, wow, these people are out on the. It's bad enough we're dealing with a pandemic, but these people are like vulnerable, right? They're on the streets. They don't really have a safe haven, and I think that's what spawned the idea. And then I think I realized there was a double entendre, if you will, and that is we all need our safe place we go to too. Like, what's that safe place? Like, whether it's might be doing videos for you, right? Or it might be watching movies, or listening to music, or it might be making music, or being an actor, or an acting class. Like, where is your safe place to express yourself? And so that's why I decided I wanted to call this record Safe Haven. That was the main reason because that was what was on my mind.
Right on. I hear you. The world is changing around us, and we are just passengers.
That's right.
The Healer is the second track on the album.
Yeah, so the Healer was one of the first soirees into people challenging me. I had a friend who was a former acting student of mine who had a label called Farmer Records up in Northern Cal, and I would travel with them to South by Southwest, and we started having conversations, and the challenge was sort of like maybe write from some other points of view, right, not just my internal dialogue and such, and that kind of spawned me because I'm obviously an actor. I can take on a character role, and I just think that plastic surgery is such a shallow topic. In LA, it's obviously it's very prevalent, and it only furthers people thinking LA is a shallow place, which maybe it is. And I thought, what about a story about a egotistical plastic surgeon convincing a woman playing God and what he can do to make her look better than God? And that was the spawn of it. I love when I play that song live. I just say, this song is told from the point of view of a plastic surgeon, and people are just like, and then they listen because they're like, what the hell is this dude talking about? But there's always people like actually like, okay, I'm going to listen to this tune, which is great, right? But I'm proud of how that song came out. That one had to be the biggest production, with the keyboards and the horns. And I would love to do a music video. I always say, if anybody wants to help me finance making a music video, I would love to make that music video playing the plastic surgeon. I sort of picture it starting, in the white smock in the office, and then the office goes away, and now it's a stage with background singers and horns, and he's just selling this whole thing that he's going to do for this woman, and then putting this middle-aged woman through like a conveyor belt and coming out looking like Barbie on the other side. That would be a video worth doing.
Or it could go horribly awry, as it sometimes does.
Yes.
These
or,
things.
or Or what I love about, one of my favorite, I think everybody's favorite shows, The Twilight Zone, when the girl goes through all of the, to try to look pretty by their standards, and then you see her, she looks fine, and then they're the ones with the turned up noses, wearing what most people probably don't know. Those are Commedia dell'arte masks, basically. The look that all of the people have in that episode, very much Commedia dell'arte masks, which really is the origin of acting. The people in Italy and Spain that were pissed off with their government started wearing masks on the weekend and portraying these characters and making fun of them. And these became the archetypes of comedy, essentially. And those are the masks. I own several. I went to Italy and I actually bought a bunch of them. Yes, art comes from the people being pissed off. All real good art comes from the people at the bottom being pissed off at the people at the top.
Fair enough. I think Rod Serling would agree with you. Twilight Zone is my favorite show of all time.
Brilliant.
My favorite show.
Freaking brilliant, man.
Yep, still holds up.
Yes, it does.
The third track is the thing we are all concerned about, Big Brother.
Yes, and yeah, it's very well. I think the irony is we were George Orwell's 1984 was about how they were going to spy on us, but the reality is we're spying on ourselves. All they had to do, they came with a much better idea. Give us phones with cameras, give us a platform to communicate on, and we will brag about ourselves all day long, every day. Look at me in Cancun. Look at me, And I always say this. I always tell my son, who grew up in this era with all this stuff, do not compare yourself to people's highlight reels, because that's all it is. Everybody's dealing with shit. Everybody's got highs and lows. Nobody's just living a great, super high, wonderful life all the time. That just ain't real. That ain't what's happening. And the ones that do it too much are really the ones that you got to wonder about, when they're always trying to show hyper reality about how great they are. I hate to say it, but those are sometimes the people who either, do themselves in or like that. You know what I mean? Because they're trying so hard to show you how great things are. Look, man, I mean, life has highs and lows. Life has ups and downs, and you got to be able to deal with the downs. That's the real key in life is dealing with the downs. Getting through those processes, not living a perfectly plastic life. You know what I mean? So the song Big Brother is just like the track says, who knew Big Brother would turn out to be you? We've become our own Big Brother, and that was the song that spawned the Benny Bliss movie.
Oh, nice. That's great.
That was the song that spawned it.
That makes sense. My favorite track on the record is this next track, hilarious and super smart, Bills in Space.
Just what we were talking about, right? It's about the billionaire space race, right? And which I think is the biggest ego trip on the planet. Like, these richest dudes get to play starman. It's like, I keep saying this, but I mean it. Like, I would like these three billionaire, super wealthy human beings to put their heads together and deal with stuff on the planet, like homelessness and world hunger and things that actually would make a difference here. But I say sarcastically, the reason they don't do that is because they can't monetize it. If you can figure out how to make money on homelessness, and you can figure out how to make money on feeding the planet, I guess, then maybe they'd do it. But that's why I say it's an ego trip, because it's just about it's about power, right? It's about control ultimately, or whatever. And that's not. I'd like to see these great minds, these great businessmen do. I mean, they've made enough money. They've made enough money, and that's why at least I applaud Bill Gates and his wife for creating their foundation, because I feel like they're actually out there, trying to make a difference, particularly in Africa, which is like, the toughest, right? Because they don't have any running water, man. They're not. That's where that was like being the sort of the basics of civilization are electricity and water, right? Because then you have toilets, and then you don't use the rivers, and then they don't get polluted, and people don't get malaria. And these cats could do that, right? These cats could go they could solve all that stuff. At least I think they could. I mean, they can get a man to the moon. What can't they do, right?
They can't. They won't. It's what they won't do, not just what they can't do. But I'm with you on that. Great. That's a great track. If anybody could hear one track off this record, I hope it's that one. But the whole
it's fun, right? I mean, I say this all, and it sounds heavy, but the song is not heavy. The song is fun, and poking fun and making light of it. And I think that's I think good comedy. I think this is probably the most comedic song, if you will. It has that ability to make us look at ourselves and laugh, right? And
Right.
I think that this song accomplishes
Well, see,
that.
like we can look at them and laugh. I think what happens is at a certain wealth status, you lose all self awareness somehow. I wouldn't, but they do. I mean, again, it seems like the correlation is financial, and they lose their self awareness, which is bizarre. Then you get bizarre. You know, you get
Yeah, I don't know. I
Elon
obviously
Musk
I'm not
levels.
there, but yeah, I don't know. What I think, the thing that I think, unfortunately, is that like you hear like Musk talk, that there's not enough workers. Like they're looking for like I create, but I need worker bees to like I'm the queen bee, but I need like workers, worker bees to fulfill my things.
Mm.
And sort of sort of looks, but yet at the same time, sort of looks down on workers, right? They're just the workers, right? But come on, man. At the end of the day, we're all just people.
Yeah, right on. I
When you
live
get
about
that
yeah.
high, I guess when you get that high, we look almighty small down here, I guess.
Yep, indeed. I live in San Francisco, about 10 blocks away from that headquarters of that social network. So and that's my field is marketing and media. So I know all about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, the next track. Music is my passion, though. That's the thing I actually am an expert at. The next track is "Look Out."
Right. So Lookout was written on an acoustic guitar, and a lot of my stuff is, but in that one in particular, I decided to leave the acoustic guitar in there because I like those bare bones to start with. I was taught that if a song sounds good on an acoustic guitar or a piano, bare bones, you've written something. You know what I mean? And then you can build from there. But yeah, I don't know. Once I started writing the song in the chorus, this idea of Lookout came, and then from there, the idea of it's a classic story. It's not like I made it up, but it's one of these things I've thought many times. Like, what would it be like to be a fighter and be told you had to throw a fight? I just the idea of that is just you say to yourself, could I do it? Like, and I guess maybe if your life was at stake, I guess maybe it could, but it's such a you're putting your ass on the line. I don't think there's anything more than putting your ass on the line, getting in a ring against another man, wrapping your gloves like bricks in your hands and going at it, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? And we all love to watch it because it's crazy. But to then be told you have to take a dive, I think would just be horrible. And I respect people like when going back in history a little bit, but one of the greatest fighters of all time is a guy named Archie Moore who refused, and that's when the mob really had their hands in things and held out and held out and held out and finally got a title shot. Got a title in his 40s because he would not cow down to that stuff. And you got, historically, the guys, I mean, what a will this man had. And he went on a talk about publicity. He went on a huge publicity campaign. That was wow. He got over. He just kept using the media to the point where like they had to let him fight. It just and I think the fight was I think I just saw something recently, some crazy thing like the champ got like good prize money back then, like $250,000 or something, and he got like $2,000. But he didn't care. He just wanted a chance to fight the champ, and of course he whipped his ass because he was a bad man. But I also think of the scene in when Marlon Brando, in one of my favorite films, Streetcar Named I'm not Streetcar Named On the Waterfront, one of my favorite films. When he does that great scene with his brother, that hey man, I could have been somebody, I could have been a contender. It's like I think that everybody sort of felt like they're an underdog in the world can relate to that scene. And so that's just where that idea came from.
Right on, and very similar to another movie you had a role in not too long ago, Bronx Bull, about a guy from my hometown, Jake LaMotta.
Yeah,
Uh,
Martin Gigi directed that film. The guy I was saying
yeah,
about the keyboard player.
that's
And
great.
yeah, I had a small role in that, but I was glad to be a part of it because yeah, like I mean, talking about one of the toughest dudes ever, Jake LaMotta. And back, what's scary is with all they know now and how many guys have maybe tops 40 fights and maybe fight. If they have a bad fight, they don't fight for a year or 6 months. Those dudes were fighting like regularly. Like he fought Sugar Ray Leonard 6 times. Like they'd be fighting like the next week. You're like, and that's why those guys have 150 fights, and by the time they hit like 50, 60, they have no memory left because no human being can endure that type of punishment.
Indeed, indeed. And then, of course, the last track on the record is "Good Times," which we talked a little bit about already.
Yeah, so like I said, Good Times is out of all the tracks is the one that I've had the longest of these tracks, and it's always been a good showstopper. It's even acoustically, people would get up and dance. Like I always knew, like I've always known this song would had a beat that would get people going. And you know, the concept's simple. It's three different stories of the same thing, though. People, one way or another, violating, crossing the line, and that shit ain't gonna last. You think you're up on people now. You know, you think you're getting over on your girlfriend, or the preacher thinks he's getting over on the church people, or the politicians thinks they're getting over on people who vote for him. But in the end, it's all gonna come back to roost on you, man. Those good times ain't gonna last. And we just played our first festival at a place in Northern California, the Haunted Pyramids, and that was great because this band's been playing together for a while now. But to finally get on a bigger stage, big lights, big PA, not having to bring our own PA, playing in a bar or whatever, you know, and just cranking it up. And we just put out a video of that particular song, and I say, hey, you want to see if I can play it all? You want to see if my band can rock it all? Go find Good Times. It's up there now and on YouTube. And you know, if you don't think it's any good, then you know that's about as good as I got. So you don't like, but I think you will. And it was cool since it was a little bit more of a rowdy crowd. It actually got a little bit of a mosh pit thing happening, and I was like, yeah. So I'm looking forward to some other maybe more rowdy big festivals where we could get it going. You know.
I don't. I'm sorry. I was out of town when that festival happened. Next time I'll be there. I was at an mostly acoustic punk show last night, and people were circle pitting and moshing and everything, even though it was kind of low key chill.
I love that though. That's not something people would even think exists.
Yeah.
A punk acoustic gig. I love that. That sounds really interesting to me.
They might dig you, so we'll see. We'll just help promote this video
All right.
and get you some more attention there for this great record. Thank you for sharing all that with us. I just have a couple more for you, man. You've been terrific.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. I imagine, you know, that, you know, a little bit out of, you know, you still have your career and you make your music and you do films and everything.
Yeah.
Out of the Hollywood rigmarole,
Yes.
I know that Savannah is a very well-known artistic town and a music
Yes.
town and a culture,
Yes.
a very well-cultured town. How do you find, you know, your happiness there? How do you find
Well,
your
number one is I don't get recognized much, which is great. So I love my anonymity because there are a lot of movies that get shot here. So big people are here, like Travolta's here, Will Smith's here, you know. So it's like they're always looking at those guys, right? So it's great. So I rarely, you know, once in a while we'll be doing a set and then you'll see it and then someone will get on their phone and then, oh, they know, they recognize me. But I actually get recognized more in LA because people are in LA are always looking for that, right? So I've enjoyed my anonymity. I've also just I was in LA my whole life. I grew up there. And so not only did I grow up there and have those memories, but I had, you know, 35 years of successes and failures in LA. And it's like, you know, I couldn't drive anywhere without some kind of memory. Like, oh, I got a job at this studio. Oh, I didn't get the job at that studio. Or, oh, I shot this project here. Or, oh, I shot this project here, but I hated the director or whatever the case is. It was like I couldn't divorce myself from everything around me. It all had memories. So to kind of get to step off of that and just start sort of clean was really good for me mentally. I needed it. And the thing is, though, that the other thing was LA was starting to slow down. I could see the writing on the wall, and as I say, I just could see the writing on the wall that pasty white boys at 50 were not hot. And I was like, so it might be time to get out of here. You know, rents and mortgages are insane, and there's a whole Southeast market, you know, that starts in Atlanta, but it really is a much bigger. It's the whole Southeast. It's within 400 miles of Atlanta in any direction. So I've worked in, you know, North Carolina, and I've worked in Florida. So I've worked South Carolina. So I've worked in Atlanta. But also the other advantage is it's only an hour and a half flight to New York. So the last two jobs I did were actually New York-based jobs. That was that Grand Theft Auto. Shot that out on Long Island. And the other cool the movie that came out this year that was really cool is The Wrath of Becky, which again, during the pandemic, I said, grow this beard and the Proud Boy type role will come. And it did. And it did. And I even get to play banjo in that thing, which was pretty wild. They asked, can you play banjo? I said, I don't know, give me one, see if I can figure it out. And yeah, I came up with something and it came out pretty cool. Anytime I can do any kind of music in a movie, I'm game for it, you know. And but that was shot in New Jersey. So Now, so I still got my foot in LA. You know, I go back there for work too, but now I've expanded into kind of 3 markets, which I think has been good. It's kind of picked up the slack that was happening in LA. And honestly, most guys I know my age that were working actors over the last several years, it's just dried up. So I think I made the right pivot at the right time, and also to get out of LA before the pandemic, man, I think was a definite blessing because that place really got crazy.
True that. And New Jersey is the Florida of the Northeast, by the way. Anyone who wants to know.
Are you telling me it's as crazy as Florida? Because you ever watch all the Datelines? It's always somebody from Florida. You ever notice that?
It's Florida man is a real
I'm
thing.
like, is it in the water there or what? Because I'm like,
I'm
they're almost always like some crazy lady from Florida or some
yeah.
crazy.
I think
I'm
it's
like,
the
I don't
it's a combination of factors. Could be the heat, could be other things, alligators. Who knows? I'd be a failure at my job if I didn't ask you about. We're coming up on 30 years of Children of the Corn next year.
40.
I'm sorry, 40. Excuse me.
Yes.
I'm senile. Four
No,
oh
I'm the one getting seen now, brother.
yeah,
40 years.
1984 next year
Yeah.
is the big 40, and it was
Yeah.
actually I saw a lot of like the Universal movie monsters as a little kid, but Children of the
Yeah.
Corn was the first horror movie I ever saw, and it deeply
Oh.
scarred me to begin with. Shout
Oh.
out shout out to my boy Danny Graff. I saw that on VHS in his house upstairs from my apartment in 19, probably
How
the
how
year after it
how
came out.
how old were you?
I was a preteen, and
Yes.
it wrecked me. I couldn't go in. I couldn't have like a milkshake forever after that. The ice cream parlor scene, right, where the dad
I've
gets.
heard a lot of things, but I've not heard I couldn't have a milkshake.
Yeah, and look at me.
That's
I'm full of
crazy.
I'm full of ice cream. Basically, I'm made of ice cream in a human suit. But like it was a wonderful film. Obviously it set you off on your acting career,
It sure
it's
did.
such a memorable role.
Sure
Not
it
just
did.
not just how well it was written, but how well carried that whole movie
Thank you.
in a lot of
Thank
ways. So I wanted to ask you. It's spooky season. We're about to have Halloween. This will run a little bit after, but of course
you.
I have
Right.
to ask you about your recollections of that time and any memories you want to share about Children of the Corn.
Well, first I'd say yeah, the 40th anniversary is definitely sort of a mind blowing thing. Like, how did we get here? And it's amazing we're still talking about the film and that people still want to talk about the film. And I've been doing conventions now for around 15 years. I'm gonna go out on top. I'm gonna do this run next year. It's gonna be a big run. Gonna be busy. Gonna be a lot of big shows. Gonna do it. And I just don't want to. I've been doing them long enough that I've seen the guys who are getting wheeled in on their wheelchairs who can't stand up and take pictures. And I'm like, I don't want to be that dude. So I'm like, I think this is a good time to call it. So that'll be cool. Yeah, the movie, it was, I was just an actor trying to get a job, man. I was trying to break into the business, right? And I studied in a professional workshop for about 5 years. Everybody in there, including my manager, who was my mentor, Virgil Fry, was like, "You're good. As soon as you turn 18, man, it's going to happen." Because back then, you had to be of legal age to work an 8-hour day. They didn't emancipate people like they do now. So it was all. So I caught the right wave at the right time. Being 18 and teen cinema was blowing up in the 80s, and I looked 15. So I had all those things going for me, plus 5 years training, which is just more than most kids my age had, right? So I had a lot of things in my favor to tilt things in my favor, and I had a chip on my shoulder at that point. I felt like I'm good enough, and I want to go in there and get it, and I just put my game face on, and I just went after that audition, and none of us would have ever predicted that, it would have become such a thing because horror films were considered very, very much B movies at that point, and the critics panned it, trashed me, all that. But, those guys are all pretty much gone. And here we are still talking about this movie. So something obviously happened, and we turned out to be on the right side of history. Who would have known horror would go mainstream, right? Like, who would have known? But the thing I talk about most about the actual experience of making it was there was when we shot in that cornfield that they cut away, that open space, we'd be in a trailer, then you go through this little sort of walkway that they cut out in this maze to get to that place. And there was just sort of this energy would build up, and by the time I got there, I would just be in the space I needed to be for this guy. When you're really doing good acting, what happens, at least what happens for me, is the character takes forefront. He's there, and you're kind of the witness back here, kind of watching. You're still cognizant. You know that you have to go to this mark or whatever, but you're almost witnessing something happening, and that happened for me a lot in the project. And I felt energy like come through me and out me like I've never felt in a project before or since. But I didn't feel it was evil, so I wasn't scared of it. I felt it was what actors talk about, that thing they call the muse. You know, that muse came through, and obviously something must have happened because, like I said, we're here, we are, we're still talking about it. And it was all about proving to myself and proving to, Hollywood, the world, that I could do this, that I belonged. And when I was done with the movie, I just knew in my bones, I knew in my gut of guts that this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm going to do with my life. And, I guess that turned out to be true.
Right on. Thank you so much for sharing that. By the way, you are not just Children of the Corn. You have many roles, Memphis Belle, tons of other movies and television, and now video games and things. So I hope people go deep dive, and they might love you for that one thing, but I hope they explore the rest of your awesome career and now your music. That's going to start reaching people, I believe. So thank you for Safe Haven. I hope you get to do all the conventions and things. We've done a bunch of horror cons and things like that, Spooky Empire and all that.
I'm doing Spooky Empire next year in. I have this written down already. I wouldn't have this tells you this year. I already have all these shows booked for next year that you wouldn't even know normally. So Spooky Empire next May 17th through the 19th. So I'm glad to be there because that's obviously a really, really good show. I've done it a couple times. So I assume we are probably going to get Spooky Empire for this big 40th. So very cool.
We've covered and attended Spooky Empire as panelists, so let me tell you, they do a phenomenal job.
I will see you there then, right?
You might see me there, sir. Courtney, thank you so much for connecting with us and sharing so much stuff with us today. We're going to link everything in the description where people can find your work. And just
I'm going to say it out loud though once. So the only way to get the record is you got to go to fakefangs.com. It's not on Spotify. It's not on any of those iTunes that have never done anything to help me sell a song before. We're bypassing all of them, going to fakefangs.com, Fake Fangs Records. You can listen to the record 3 times for free, which I think is very cool. And then after that, you don't like it, that's cool. But if you do, you can get a digi download, or you can get a limited run CD. And I think you get the digipack with that. So, got nothing to lose. Go to fakefangs.com, listen to a couple tracks. Might surprise you.